So my whole heart, is for the law enforcement community just actually first responders, not just law enforcement and military. And that's kind of that's my mission Carnivore right now, is to get that message out and be a military guy that's willing to share my experience.
Those who put their lives on the line for other people, I mean, there is no greater gift. There is no greater friendship that you could offer. I want to definitely help more people that are suffering with PTSD. It just breaks my heart to find out that anybody suffers beyond what they need to. Even though I hear from people all the time that have changed their lives on this, when I go out in the public, I'm reminded constantly that I'm weird in their eyes. They don't get what I'm trying to do. And there's tons of people that could hear about this. And if veterans and first responders and people in law enforcement who are putting their bodies and jobs and their families basically on the line to hold down some sense of lawfulness in this country to keep us free, then I definitely want to support that. And I'm glad you were able to come on and talk a little bit about your journey. What would you say to anyone like that who's watching right now, who might be thinking, what's the deal with this CarnivoreSoldier guy? I mean, I want to know what he's talking about. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dante Ferrigno, and this is Ferrigno Freedom. Welcome back for another Carnivore conversation. Today, I'm going to be speaking with Larry Allhands. You might know him better as the CarnivoreSoldier, as he started his own YouTube channel talking about his experience on a carnivore way of eating. And he sent me an email the other day, and I decided I'd like to have him come on and tell us a little bit about his story. In his email, he said, I am a U.S. Army retired Chief Warrant Officer, retired in 2019, and watching your 125 Days on Lion Diet transformation video launched me on my path. Now I'm 161 days into my journey and down from 280 pounds to 236 pounds, which I have not weighed since 1998. I believe I am going to go all the way back to my 225-230 zone that I weighed while playing sports in college, which is quite a feat for a 57-year-old. My mental, physical, and emotional healing has been so radical that I could not help but share this way of eating with all around me. And now, my brother, my son, my nephew, my sister, my brother-in-law, my next-door neighbor, several friends, and even my dog are carnivores. So like you, I thought I would start a YouTube channel to extend the reach of my message. So earlier this month, I did just that as CarnivoreSoldier, and I have made some major inroads with veterans and law enforcement. It has been great. I feel like I have something to offer this community because I know how much this way of eating has helped me physically, mentally, and emotionally, and many veterans and LEOs desperately need this help. I already have the same weighted type vest that you do that I used in conditioning when training for missions while I was still active, so I incorporated the walk and talk style which I did in the Army a lot. Laugh out loud. Anyway, I just wanted you to know that you're making a major dent in this world, and you should know a lot of us really care about you and your mission. Well, I appreciate that first thing, Larry. I just tell you before you even call in, because it means the world to me that we are taking the message that we got from someone else and passing it on to more people, because everybody can reach somebody else. And a lot of times there's a little bit of overlap in some of these channels, but in some cases, your channel may be the only one anybody's watching, or my channel may be the only one anybody's watching that talks about this way of eating and how it can change your life. So I'm looking forward to talking to you, and especially about the inroads you're making into law enforcement and to the retired soldiers, because those to me are some big inroads that need to be made. I see a lot of folks that are in law enforcement or retired law enforcement or retired soldiers who have just let themselves go, and I know they've got to be feeling it, and I'm pretty sure that emotional issues have a big root in the problem that they're facing. So I'm looking forward to talking to Larry today, the CarnivoreSoldier. So I'll bring him into our video here in just a moment. And here he is now. let's see. Guest in the green room.
Start virtual camera. There you go. There we go. That's it. I got it. I'm sorry. I'm new at all this YouTube stuff, man. This is brand new for me. So
I understand. OBS was too much for me to even try to figure out. That's why I went with Ecamm. Plus, I'm on a Mac, and OBS is even harder on a Mac. So
I can't imagine. Yeah, I'm not a Mac guy either. Totally a PC guy myself. So don't know.
Well, it should work a little easier for you then. It's just so different from what I'm used to. But hey, man, I got your email, and I think what piqued my interest the most was you're making inroads into the law enforcement and retired military community. That was what brought me to want to really come and talk to you. But of course, I'd like to be able to share your story here too, because I'm sure it must, there must be something that led you to start doing what you're doing. But I'd like to not only know a little bit about what brought you to here, but also what exactly it is you're doing. I mean, I got to be honest, I haven't had a chance to watch a whole lot of other people's YouTube channels, and I haven't had a chance to watch but one of your videos, and it was just talking about your first 30 days on there. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what brought you here, and what struggles you felt in the dealt with in the past, and what you're doing about it.
Sure. So I've always been pretty physically fit and active. I joined the military in 1984, got out in 1990. I was in the Navy back then on fast attack submarines, did a tour there, and I got out and never thought I'd go back to the military, to college, and started my career and got into computers and everything. But when the 9/11 happened, obviously, and the war broke out in 03, so 04, I rejoined. I went in the Army. And because I felt I was still in my early 30s or mid 30s, I thought I had a lot of gas in the tank. I wanted to help out. So I stayed fit, and I finished my career retiring in 2019 at the age of 53. So I started struggling, though, when I hit 50. My weight, I would have to really work up for my record PTs or physical fitness tests, try to make sure my weight was good. I was having to do, keto and basically starvation to get my body to respond. It wasn't like when I was young, when it just worked, right? I mean, so I watched my body stop responding to exercise like it used to. Recovery times were longer. Injuries lasted longer. They lingered. And, little did I knew that this was all accumulation of poisons in my diet. I had no idea. I was like looking at my peers thinking, okay, this is the way it is when you get old, right?
Yeah.
This is normal. So went along, and then when I retired, then I started really sliding down because I wasn't, running and gunning with the troops anymore. I was still physically fit, but not as active. Then COVID happened, and you're trapped in the house for a year, kind of thing. It was crazy, right? It was like not good. So my health really declined, and I got to the point. So right now I'm 6'2.5", 236 pounds. When I was active duty, I was about 240. Normally when I joined, I'll say, up to 260 max. And then I'd gotten to 280 though. So right before I found Carnivore, and I was just like going through this black hole. I stopped even weighing myself. I'm like, well, this is ridiculous. I was like, I couldn't run. I had injuries. I was a disabled vet. So I had some injuries. I can't run anymore. Things I couldn't do. Right. So I was on YouTube, and I like to tell this story because you're involved. But I was just on YouTube one day, and this picture of you, my 120-day carnivore or whatever, I forget what it's called, but it's your first one, right? It was
125 days on lion diet.
That's what it is. Yeah. So I saw that, and I saw the pictures. I'm like, before and after, and I'm like, okay, well, this is probably a scam, but I'll check it out. It's probably some diet pill or something, whatever. I had no idea what lion diet was, never heard of it, right? So I'm like, oh, I watched it. So I watched it, and I was intrigued. And the reason I was intrigued is because you're a regular guy. You're not a genetic freak. You're not some doctor. You're not some nutritionist. Like when I watch, Ken Baker, which I did after I discovered yours, I went down the rabbit hole and I saw, Dr. Baker, and I saw all these other carnivore doctors that were like all ripped, and, Dr. Kilt even, they're super fit. And I'm like, man, if that's the only guys I saw succeeding at this, and those are the only pictures they shared, I wouldn't be too encouraged, right?
Yeah, Sean Baker is intimidating even to me. I was standing next to him and thinking, my goodness.
Right, exactly. And Dr. Chafee, that guy's ripped too, and he's a big dude.
Yeah.
Actually, all these guys are big dudes. But
Dr. Barry is big. I had no idea until I met him. I was like, oh my goodness, you look small in your videos, like it's just
right,
normal size. And then when you meet him, you're like, man, this is a bear.
yeah, that's well, healthy living, I guess. But so I knew after seeing your video and seeing theirs. Okay, first they were all doctors, so there's something to this, right? And they weren't selling things, which was encouraging. And you weren't selling anything, so I was like, okay, this is just some guy sharing a story. So and then I saw that you had actually eaten Pop-Tarts during your diet and done all the bad things you could do at one point. You'd probably done, right? And not done things exactly correct or whatever, and just learned the craft as you went. So I'm like, I can do this. I decided right there. I said, so I was a plans guy in the military. I was a chief warrant officer. I did planning. So I was like, I can do this. I can make a plan and I can work the plan, because I know if I do, based on everything I've researched here, that this is going to work. So I put the plan together, and I'm like, all right, first step in the plan. I don't know if you know history, but Cortez burned his ships when he got to
Yeah.
the New World, because he didn't want his guys missing home and thinking they had an option to go back, right? So I burned my ships. I'm like, that's it. I'm burning my ships. I went to my pantry. I dumped everything out to the food bank, except for some food that my son ate, because I didn't want to impose it. I didn't know if this was going to work. In your mind you're thinking it's work, but you're thinking, is it really right? I
Right.
haven't done it before, so I have no idea until I do it. But I did burn the ships, right? So I had some food there that was for him, but I just put that on one shelf that was really hard to get down low, that I don't like going to, so it was easier, right? And the fridge, I had one little section where he had his stuff, a little drawer, and everything else was just water and beef, and chicken and bacon and eggs. That's what I did when I started, and butter, So I went down that road, and man, in the first 30 days, and what was exciting is I had my annual VA checkup coming, and it was like 28 days after I started. I saw it on the calendar. I'm like, okay, cool. I can do this for 28 days. They're going to do my blood work, and they're going to tell me what's going on right there, if it's improved, right? It's only been 28 days, but at least I'll know something.
Right.
Well, I went from 280 to 265 in 20 days. I basically did that. So when I went in, I was feeling great. Obviously, the energy level was there. My mental health started getting better. I just felt better in every aspect of my life. And I told my doctor, I'm like, yeah, I'm doing this carnivore diet. I'm just eating high fat diet with protein and no carbs and no veggies or anything. And she's like, well, that's kind of extreme, but she said, I'm not going to, say not to do it, because it appears to be working for you right now. And she said, your labs are better. I said, okay. She said, but what I am going to do is I'm going to schedule in 3 months another set of labs. I'm like, fantastic. That's awesome. That I get free labs, right? So I'm like, okay, that's great. So I was really stoked that she was doing that. And then of course I just kept going down and basically honing my skill at being a carnivore, because that's what it is. You have to develop. And I'm a big guy on and please feel free to break in if you ever have any questions or comments, but I'll keep talking because I'm a talker. But I basically am a big believer in resilience and building resilience, right? And building and the way I look at it is, you have to set a plan, because planning is thinking about something. No building was ever built, no bridge was ever built, no city was ever built without someone thinking about it first, and then the plans become actions, right? So you have to set plans in your mind, so you start contemplating what's going to happen. How am I going to be a carnivore? Oh, well, first I'm going to take stuff out of my house, then I'm going to buy stuff I need, then I'm going to figure out how to cook it, right? So I got an air fryer because I saw your video with the frozen steak. That's amazing. That's a game changer, by the way. But anyway, so planning, that's a big part. And then you get those plans and start working actions into the plans, daily actions, right? And that's what I started doing. I'm like, okay, so I'm going to start making daily actions towards these plans. And then when you make those actions for more than 21 up to 60 days, they become habits, right? That's how you build a habit. We know psychologically that's how the brain works. So you make good habits, break bad habits, and do it for a period. And then your habits start becoming your character after that, because you've got habits, and that takes a while. So right now I think I'm in the character building. I'm 164 or something like that, my daily. So I'm into the character building. My habits are firmly entrenched now. I have good habits. And
164 in your daily. What does that mean?
day 164, sorry. My
Oh,
daily
day
count.
164. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. day 164. So I'm into the habit zone, I think. Okay. and then the habit will become my character probably after about a year or two. I think that's when my character is just going to be solid. Those things are firmly entrenched, and they'd be hard to break. I'd have to pretty much want to break them, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's really the way you go. You build it up that way. You start with your plan, and then make actions, and then if actions aren't working, cross them out, get them out of there. Go to the next, make an alternate action.
Yeah,
So
that's a little different than my experience in some ways because I would say that this certainly appeals to military and law enforcement people because that's kind of been ingrained in you that you make a
yeah,
plan and then you attack the plan and you do all that. A lot of times, folks that haven't had that discipline that's been enforced on them through the basic training and through getting to that point through military training that you've had, it can be a lot harder because a
sure,
lot of times we're not making plans like that. We're just trying to get through each day. I watch it with my wife who struggles with discipline just as much as I did. It's like she doesn't think about, am I going to be ready for what I'm going to need to eat today? If it wasn't for me being here to make sure she was eating meat all the time, she wouldn't keep doing it. So I know
yeah,
it's hard for a lot of folks, but a lot of times people need that switch in their head that just says, I got to do something. And then
yep,
when they find something that might be the solution, you do need to focus all your energy on it, just like you're talking about with the plan. But sometimes it's hard to make plans because you don't know what to do. And like you mentioned, when you're living with other people, see, I had to deal with that too, where I didn't want to enforce anything on anybody else because this was unheard of to me at the time. I knew
right,
that low carb dieting was a good thing, and I had done the Atkins diet before, but I had never even considered going all beef. If it wasn't for the fact that the person that mentioned it to me, or the person I heard it from, which happened to be Jordan Peterson, was somebody that I had a lot of respect for the way he thinks and the way his mind works. To hear him talk about something that directly could be affecting a problem that I'm having, I thought, well, I'm definitely going to listen and give it a try. But at the same time, who knows? I might be crazy for listening to him or even doing
yeah,
what I'm
right,
doing. And I don't definitely don't want to force this on my wife and kids at the same time. But even as I've had the benefits come from it, there's nothing you can do that's going to get people to get to that moment where they realize they need to do something other than encouraging through continued success of your own by being that
right,
example. And I was just thinking about that while you were talking because usually I talk about how people need to have that breaking point moment, but it didn't sound like you really had a breaking point moment. You just looked at it and said, this is not where I need to be. I'm going to make a plan and get where I'm going to be. And hopefully my influence is what kind of made that path seem clear, is what you're
yeah,
saying.
yeah. It gave me encouragement that I could do it. Seeing that you did it, and again, you had people in the house. I saw all the stuff on your counter back there that was definitely not carnivore. And here's the good news: my son is a carnivore now by his choice. Even when he goes to his mom's house, we're divorced, so he goes to his mom's house, and I gave him advice on how to do it. If you want to maintain it, I said just eat all your meat on the plate first, ask for seconds, and then pick it whatever's left, and try to stay away and don't do any sugar or bread or anything. And he's like, okay, so he does that when he's not with me. When he's with me, it's like steak. It's BBBE, right? He's just 100%. And let me tell you what, he took 20 seconds off his PR already, and he just started cross country this season. He already took 20 seconds off his best time, so it's working. I mean, his energy level's high. He's growing like a weed. A 14-year-old kid should be. And just it's exciting to see him totally embrace it.
Yeah,
And
so he was
and
already kind of athletic at the time.
yeah, I mean, he's not like a super athlete or anything, but he was definitely not fat. He was because he plays soccer, ran track, and cross country, and he's played soccer for years. So he's not, he's never been a fat kid. But he did gain some weight because when he went carnivore, he actually lost 10 pounds, and I think most of it was like in his butt. His like butt kind of smaller, and it just he just caught a little bit of a gamer butt, I call it, from playing games. So he plays video games too. But
Yeah.
anyway, so he lost 10 pounds, which I didn't think was possible, but he did. And, being that much lighter makes a difference when you run too and play soccer. So
Oh, I'm
now he
sure.
looks, when we grew up, I'm 57. You're probably younger than me, but you're in my age group where when
Yeah,
we
I'm
saw kids,
50.
they were all sticks. They were all kids were like, it was very rare to see fat kids. And if there was like one or two in class, right?
I was never
But
the
all the
stick. I
kids,
can say that.
yeah, but you know what I'm saying? I mean, when you go to the pool, all these kids were really thin, or it was just that's the way I grew up. And I was when I was young, but I grew up eating in the 60s and 70s before they came out with the food pyramid and all that terrible and low fat stuff. So, my mom used to make our salad dressing with buttermilk, right? So she would like season buttermilk. So I mean that, of course, much healthier than any seed oils you're going to put in your diet.
Yeah.
Of course, none of us knew because we've been lied to for so long, but. I think the other thing is besides just planning and building character, like building that, that schedule is the other thing is resilience that I'm really big about. And a lot of people think being resilient is just being tough where you can take a punch, right? It's not. Resilience is taking a punch, getting knocked all the way down, and how fast you pop up and how do you pop up. That's resilience. So that taking a punch could be going to a birthday party when you weren't prepared because you didn't plan. So you didn't eat before you went. So you're hungry and someone gives you cake and you ate it. Great. You just got knocked to the mat. How are you going to react, right? Are you going to quit? Are you going to continue to binge? Or are you going to pop up and say, that's it. This is starting. I'm right here. I'm just going forward, and that's a skill that can be built. So whenever you do get a failure, I like, to say that that's your opportunity to start learning resilience because it's not something we're born with. You have to learn it and you have to practice it. You can only practice it through reps. So I think that's something like your Pop-Tart story, right? That was a perfect resilient. You popped up and the next day you're like, boom, back on track, right?
Yeah.
Felt like garbage. And my son did it too because he went out and had a burger at Whataburger, which in Texas is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And that was his favorite, And it was our favorite hangout. I mean, we used to love going to Whataburger. I haven't been in forever. But he ate a Whataburger and then immediately felt terrible. His stomach was jacked up. And he told me, he said, Dad, it didn't even taste like I thought it would. I'm like, yeah, this stuff is in your memory. It tastes better in your memory than it does in person, I think, when you do, I'm sure the Pop-Tarts were the same way, right? Probably tasted like garbage.
Oh, it did. It was horrible.
but in your mind, when you're about to bite it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is going to be bliss, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it used to be that way too. And now it's just... those things taste awful. Yeah, what you were saying though about that resilience, what that reminds me of is one of my favorite things from my childhood that was a motivational for me was Rocky. And Rocky talked about it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep on going. Yep. And it's like you gotta push through those moments where you say you don't want to deal with it. You don't want to face it. You don't want to fight it. I think that's natural in a lot of us. And some people it's less natural for, but I think everybody has that point where they're just like, I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to have that in my life right now. And we try to push it back. And a lot of times we wind up pushing it back with food, drugs, alcohol, and all kind of things. And with the system the way it is right now, especially with the food and pharma system the way it is, it seems like we're set up for that failure to be built in. My mother, when I was growing up, because you were talking about how all the kids were stick figures, that's the way I felt looking at them, but I didn't feel that way. I didn't look that way. I was the one in second grade running around the track with a trash bag on for a jersey because they were trying to get me to lose some weight. And I didn't understand why I had those struggles. My mother was always saying, you don't need to be drinking them red juices and you need to eat this margarine and eat all these, whatever the current fad was at the time that they were talking about, whether it was what the government was pushing or what Amway or Cambridge or one of those, whoever was marketing nutritional supplements at the time, she was into all that stuff. And I was taking those powders and even as a young person, I was eating these things. And then I thought, why am I always like this? But I was also eating the processed garbage that was out there, but it wasn't marketed as garbage. It was marketed as health food. Cereals said they were heart healthy and that this was good for you because it was low fat, so it was confusing that I wanted to do all the right things, but I just didn't have the right tools. And I think that's what made the big difference for me as a young person. And I don't know. I think there's a genetic aspect to that as well. But I had that desire to want to overcome, but I couldn't understand why I wasn't. And I think it has just a lot to do with we were given a lot of bad information. And then
Right.
when you first heard about carnivore way of eating, what was your first thought? Like when you
Uh,
realized that I'm just eating meat all the time, that had to strike you as being off.
yeah, I wanted to see what was going to happen to this guy. I'm like, let's let's see. He's going to film it every day. I want to see what happens to this guy. I'm thinking this is going to be bad, you know. And then I started watching it, and I started seeing the difference in you, and there's no denying it. So that's my dog Duke back there. He's my service dog. So anyway, I saw that, and that was pretty shocking. And then I was like, okay, well, then I didn't believe again, like many others, that he probably fell off. This is just like I've seen people lose weight on every kind of diet, right, and then fall off and get back to what they were at. That's pretty much the normal for probably 99.9% of people that take a diet, right?
Yeah.
So I looked up for more frequent videos, and you just got better and better looking, and I mean in shape, you know, as far as your physical
Yeah.
fitness. I was like, okay, this guy is healing, and that's a difference, right? You're healing. You're not just addressing some symptoms. You're actually healing your body, and it's so awesome. I think my body is going to tune down. I'm still losing weight. I'm on Lion right now for like 37 days. I've been on. I only plan to do 30, but that's just so easy. I'm just going to keep rolling, and I have modified it a little bit, added some butter to my steaks, but I mean that's about it. But
Yeah, I
I think
can't
my
get away
body,
from butter, no matter how
yeah,
hard I
it's so
try.
good.
Even though I kind of blame it on sometimes I get this raspy voice, but it is so good, and it's a good fat
Right?
source. So I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
until I
it's
find out
quality.
it's causing me any negatives that are physically keeping me back, it's going to be hard for me to keep butter out.
Yeah, I think my body's just going to go back to the way it was when I was in college, about 225 to 230. So I'll probably lose 6 or 7 pounds and lean out more, like you look like you're super lean. I still have some fat, but I mean it's dropping off pretty quick. And so anyway, the other things I noticed was like my mental clarity. Obviously, everyone talks about that, but my mental health, like my optimism levels
Mm,
were high, my motivation levels were high, my desire to interact with people went up, just things like that, and just depression, anxiety dropped off, sleep quality better. These are things that veterans and law enforcement struggle with, right? Because
yeah,
their nature of their job, and then you take that nature of the job, which is already tough, and you add mental health issues, and then you have suicide rates and such that are and mental illness that are super high, right?
yeah,
So you know, I have shared before. I mean, everyone knows 22 veterans a day take their own lives in America, and that's just America. It's all over, right? It's everywhere where there's a standard Western diet and military presence. I think so. I thought, well, this has really helped me, and you know, what if I mean, what percentage of those 22 a day are eating a bad diet and are in a bad place because of that? So I reached out to some other veterans that are doing carnivore, some with me. I've introduced, and I'd actually introduced it to some people, and they actually did it, and I saw their lives change. This is why I started a YouTube channel, because my initial circle of friends, a lot of people started doing it, including my brother, my sister, a couple of veterans I know, including my neighbor, you know, my son, my nephew, and everyone, and a couple of other friends, and they started sharing it to other friends. So I saw this ripple effect, and I'm like, wow, this is really starting to change people's lives. And you know, what if I did a YouTube channel, which I had no inclination to do? Like I said, I don't know the skills. I'm just like, what if I could get to more people, and veterans especially, right? Because up to this point, when on our veteran boards, we have a veteran boards, we chat, and we always put out the messages, you know, especially around Memorial Day or around certain days. We say, hey, you know, if you're feeling bad, give us a call. Give me a call. I'm around. Here's my number, and we always post that, and that's a nice tool. But what if we had a better tool, right? What if we had, hey, if you're feeling like crap and you're on this cocktail of VA drugs, try changing your diet, and maybe you can get off those drugs, and maybe, you know, maybe you'll feel better. I know a lot of them just feel like crap all the time, and I did, you know, and get depressed, and I was, and this made huge changes for me, but also the other veterans that I've talked to that are on it. They're like, yeah, this is a game changer. So much so that I think it could save lives. I think we could whittle down that 22 if people actually, you know, started in mass embracing this proper human diet and get at least get rid of seed oils. I mean, if that's all they did, that'd be
Yeah.
fantastic. I don't care. Just eat whole foods. If all they did was eat whole foods, it would probably save lives on a daily basis for mental health, let alone the physical stuff like diabetes and all this stuff and heart disease and those lives too, obviously. But so my whole heart, is for law enforcement community just actually first responders, not just law enforcement and military. And that's kind of that's my mission carnivore right now, is to get that message out and be a military guy that's willing to share my experience.
Well, that's I'm so glad you put it that way, because that's the reason why I responded to you, because I get a lot of other new carnivore YouTubers that reach out to me, and you weren't asking for time. And, I know what they're doing. They want to spread their reach and things like that. They're trying to get good at doing this. And I've had some of my viewers tell me, watch out for some of those guys. I said, look, I don't even watch those channels because I haven't got time to sit and watch YouTube all the time. But at the same time, I have the benefit of having a YouTube channel, and I have an audience of people who remind me that what I'm doing motivates them. So I get my motivation from my audience. And I know a lot of people that watch, they get their motivation from me, and I'm thankful to be able to provide that. But when you talked about being able to do it for the military community and for the law enforcement community, and now also mentioning first responders, my brother is wonderful. Every day we have our Bible study. He prays for first responders, for military, for police, because he knows that they're under a certain amount of stress that other people just don't have any clue about, And I never served. I wished I had. I was in ROTC when I was in high school, and I was planning on going into the military after high school, but I got lazy about it. And then I kind of settled into a good job that was making money in sales. And then I got married young, and then it just, it progresses, and you wind up not doing the things you'd wanted to do. But I don't have any regrets now, even though I look back and say I'd like to be able to have that badge of honor. I can at least honor those who do serve for us. And I wore my patriotic shirt today to honor our conversation, because it means a lot to me. Those who put their lives on the line for other people, I mean, there is no greater gift. There is no greater friendship that you could offer than to lay down your life for a friend. And I know a lot of the guys that are in the military, they're not necessarily thinking, I'm doing this for my country. I'm doing this I'm doing it for the guy right next to me. A lot of time is the reason why they're doing it. And you got that camaraderie, but it's still part of that same spirit that makes our country what it is. And I want to definitely help more people that are suffering with PTSD or whatever you want to call it. They keep changing the names of it. George Carlin does a whole routine on talking about how they used to call it shell shock, and now they've totally, taken all the feeling out of it by calling it post-traumatic stress disorder. But it's definitely real. And I did a video just last week that was talking about the deaths of despair being on the rise in this country. And I realized that I started my way of eating this way in 2021, January of 2021. And it was right after a lot of the stuff in 2020 had already taken all the normal stuff in my life that was causing stress and just intensified it, because working in a retirement home, and I worked with a lot of veterans there too, because we had retired vets living with us, and I had to see their problems. We had an amputee that was there trying to get through and dealing with weight issues. If I could have learned about this beforehand and been able to share it with him, it could have worked so many wonders for that man. And it just breaks my heart to find out that anybody suffers beyond what they need to, but especially because he's following his doctor's advice. He's following the directions of what they say he should be eating and not be eating. And when I look at what he was eating, it was exacerbating not only his physical problems, but his mental struggles as well. And like I say, everybody has their struggles with stress and adversity. I mean, my saying is adversity is inevitable. Stress is optional, but it's less optional when your diet is not optimal for having proper mental function, for having proper physical function. And I know there are tons of people. Even though I hear from people all the time that have changed their lives on this, when I go out in the public, I'm reminded constantly that I'm weird in their eyes. They don't get what I'm trying to do. And there's tons of people that could hear about this. And if veterans and first responders and people in law enforcement who are putting their bodies and jobs and their families basically on the line to hold down some sense of lawfulness in this country to keep us free, then I definitely want to support that. And I'm glad you were able to come on and talk a little bit about your journey, and hopefully bring some more folks that are exactly like you're talking about. Maybe they have that PTSD. Maybe they are suffering and they don't feel like they have anybody they can talk to. You know, having that veteran that's gone through it and that's experiencing the benefits of this, I hope you're able to reach a whole bunch of them. What would you say to anyone like that who's watching right now, who might be thinking, what's the deal with this carnivore soldier guy? I mean, I want to know what he's talking about.
So there's a brotherhood, and you spoke a little bit about it. And I think that brotherhood comes from in first responders and law enforcement, you know, in military. And that is because it's a unique job in that in our job, we do something different than all civilians do. When we go to work, when we go to the workplace, we actually take real risks together, where civilian world, you really don't typically, most people don't take risks together, right? Like physical risks. And then we also make real sacrifices together when we're away for long times, when we're, you know, deployed, or, you know, you're on night shifts and doing all these things that, you know, you're basically risking and sacrificing together as a group. And what we say in the military, and I'm sure the others, we say embrace the suck, right? We know it's going to suck and we're just going to all do it together. And like you said, the guy on my left and my right, they're going to do it with me, and I've got their back, they got mine. And that's the way it is. So, but when you get out, so someone might be watching this now that was a vet and they felt they had that purpose, they had that team, you know, a lot of veterans miss that. Well, I say probably all of us, you miss. And when you go away, it's easy to isolate and unplug. And, you know, even if you get into a veteran community, it's still easy to go off and do your thing. So I think, you know, plugging in, finding a community is huge. And I think the carnivore diet, you know, I hate to use like the magic pill thing, but it really is. Because it changes so many aspects of your life so rapidly and so completely, it is a game changer. I mean, if I would have known about this when I was active duty, it would have changed my whole career out. I mean, because a lot of injuries I had and things, I think I would have healed faster. I would have been more physical. I might not have gotten injured as often because I had, you know, been performing better. So many things could have changed. And I'm kind of sad I didn't find it earlier, but I'm so grateful I found it when I did, because I got such a great future ahead now because of this that I didn't, right? 6 months ago, I didn't have this future I was looking forward to. I was thinking that I was looking at my dad thinking, well, he's getting broke down and that's kind of the way it's going to be. And I'm going to be like him. And, you know, and I'm like, man, I wasn't excited about it. You know, I wasn't looking forward. And now I'm really excited. I'm like, man, when I'm 70, because listen, I'm out there now, I'm running sprints uphill at 57 years old, full out, and feeling awesome. And, you know, I do that a couple times a week, and then doing my ruck marches and just, you know, I just feel great. And I'm thinking, man, this is not as good as it gets. It gets better. That's what I'm thinking. So that's the message to people looking now. If you are a veteran, you know, you need someone to plug into. There's a lot of veterans out here too. There's Meat Fueled Life, or Meat Fueled Living. I'm sorry. She's a veteran up in Waco. There's me. There's some other ones that are too. And you can find veterans on here that have done the veteran thing, done the military or law enforcement. And then if you relate to us better, great. That's what's great. So the other thing is this. I was in a unit, we called ourselves the Wolf Pack, right? And we used to have a saying that the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf, right? And that's true. So what we have in Carnivore, in our community, we have strength as community, which, you know, we're not just a bunch of individuals doing this. And what I tell people about finding your video, Dante, was you made the video, you're a content creator, and that's great. We need those. But what's probably more important than you making that video was someone watched it and liked, subscribed, and did the bell thing or whatever, and watched more of your videos. And because that happened, the YouTube algorithm picked up on it and served it to me. So whoever that person was, we'll never know. thank you, because you changed my life. I mean, really. And I think what I like to tell people, like people that watch my channel, say, listen, if you're just a viewer, if you can be a content creator, great, be a content creator. But I know a lot of people don't have any interest or skill or desire, and that's fine. If you're not going to be a content creator, get in the fight. And the way you get in the fight is by finding content creators, liking and subscribing, encouraging them, send them messages like you said, where you get the message when someone says, hey, it's changed my life, thank you. Give us feedback. That fuels us and makes us desire to do more work, really. I mean, so I think everyone can get in the fight as the wolf pack, and that's what we need to do, right?
I had to grow into appreciate that idea of even mentioning subscribing and liking, because every video I ever watch, they say the same thing. And I thought, I'm not going to say that every time. And I still haven't done it. But you definitely give me a better appreciation for it, because if it does cause this to reach one more person, then that's a good thing. And I'm sure still I'm going to keep incorporating that, but I am thankful for everybody who does like and subscribe, because if it does help get it out to more people and it can start changing more lives, I'm very grateful for that. I'm grateful for my audience who are not in the military, because I know that they're suffering with a lot of these mental conditions as well, that are just brought on from the malaise of life and not achieving what you wanted to achieve, or maybe not stepping up to the bar like you wanted to. And I've adopted that thing that you mentioned, that the military phrase, embrace the suck, because I used to want to just embrace the leisure and embrace the pleasure and look for that only. But the more I chased it, the more elusive it was. As I've been able to say, life is tough, and you got to be tough to stand up to it. You got to be tough to take it. You've got to build yourself up to it. The diet is what freed me to be able to do that, because it was just, I really think that the stuff that's in our food, in a lot of ways, even some of the stuff that you see natural in the store, the vegetables and the fruits that have been modified through genetics and through crossbreeding and things like that, they're made to be sweeter and they're made to be more pest resistant. And all of that stuff causes us problems. And then all the junk that's on the shelves, like chocolate covered French toast cereal and whatever else they come up with.
Ridiculous.
And we look at that and think, that's going to make me feel a little better to eat this ridiculous treat. And then it becomes something that's in your cereal, by your cereal drawer every day, or whatever you call it, cabinet every day. And then you're wondering why you feel terrible when you start reading the ingredients on the back of the box. You're like, I'm taking poison. I'm taking 50 different pills basically here. Right. Every time I eat this bowl of cereal. I talked about coming off of all the medications I was on. And every time I see a medicine commercial, one of the things that strikes me is the longest part of the commercial is all the side effects you're going to have. And when you think about those ingredients that are in our food as being basically not medicine, but poison, like a lot of the stuff that's in the medicine that causes these side effects, when you see that long list of ingredients, there's a longer list of side effects that are being caused by that. And you start mixing all that stuff together, it's no wonder we're a mess. And then once you start to get all that garbage out of your body and you can see clearly and you can feel strong again, you're like, hey, I've got energy. I want to use it. I want to be able to do something with this. I was never one that wanted to go hiking or anything like that. Now, if my wife brings up, you want to go kayaking, you want to go swimming down at the spring, do you want to go hiking somewhere? I'm like, yes, let's do that. I want to do that, because I don't want to be sitting around. Even though I have to do a lot of it because of the editing and things like that, it's just living life the right way can be found this way. And who would have thought changing the way you would eat would be the key to that? But the more I look into it, the more I look into what's been in our diet, it's poison. That's ultimately what it comes down to. We're poisoning ourselves, and then we wonder why we're mentally and physically distressed and why we can't achieve the things we want to achieve. And then when you take on top of that the struggles, like you said, of law enforcement and somebody who's been, it's got to strap on a gun and a vest to keep themselves from dying every day, I imagine that added stress is just going to make that even tougher. So I'm glad that you're out there and that you're trying to help those veterans and first responders and people in law enforcement. And I would encourage anybody who is in any of those fields to come check out his channel, because he might be able to get you to something that I haven't been able to get you to. And I'm thankful for everybody who's here as well, because I just want to see people get healthy and happy. Because the more healthy and happy people are out there, maybe we can stop some of the craziness that's going on in the world, and we're not fighting with each other over little things. We can fight some of the real battles that need to be fought out there.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And that's the thing too. You talk about like veterans might connect with me better. I mean, I connected with you really well. I'm sure there's every content creator has a group of people they can reach best, right? And they're not all the same, which is great. That's by design. That's what we want. And that's why I encourage people to go out and find new content creators. You might find someone that's amazing. You might find someone that's suffering a disease that you have that has corrected it. You might find, like I haven't had any major diseases I can't share what it's like to reverse some disease that they can. So, I mean, I always tell them just, keep an open mind, and keep learning, and also educate yourself. So educating yourself, part of that is looking at YouTube, but also read, and, we call it doing the research now, which people make fun of. But back in my day, we called it reading because that's the only way you could learn. Right.
Yeah.
So, I taught myself a skill that didn't exist when I went to college. And that's what my career is now, right? So computers and network didn't exist. So if I had to go back to college to learn something to do without doing my own research, I went to school at Barnes and Noble, and that's what I recommend you guys do. Learn, get books, watch videos. In fact, I'm doing, I have a little series now that I do carnivore documentary movie reviews, right? And I just did a great review for a movie. You should check the movie out. It's free on YouTube to watch the movie. It's called Fat, a documentary. It's the one that talks about the origins of the food myths and Seventh-day Adventist and Kellogg making cereal so that people wouldn't be immoral. And it's really interesting. It's very interesting. And then it goes all the way up through Ansel Keys and Eisenhower's heart attack and how our food system we have now got built. Great documentary. So anyway, I recommend people continue to educate themselves, so that's part of crafting your skill at being a carnivore, so you understand what's going on. And also, if you do find stuff like that or good YouTube videos, you can, like I used to share Dr. Chafee videos of people or Dr. Berry videos of people who ask questions. So I'm not the expert, but I can find one and I can get a real answer, right? So, but you have to know where those videos are. You have to actually build up your little library of playlists that you have that you can share when people ask questions.
You go back to where you were talking about, you're looking at your father and thinking, okay, I'm settling into that now. Right. Well, that sounds like the reason that really pushed you over the edge is, do I want to settle into just getting old and falling apart? Am I just settling into dying now? Is it over? And it's
right.
not. And that's exactly, I'm glad you got that from my videos that encouraged you to realize you don't have to quit just because you're getting 48, 50, where I am now, but I was 48 when I started. I never would have thought it would be getting better back then. I just didn't think it was
right.
possible for me to get any of this back that I wanted from my youth. And it's actually, even when I was on the wrestling team in high school, when I finally was like at the peak of my health and my life at 17 years old, I'm in better shape now than I was then. It just 50 years old, in better shape than when I was 17, at my best form. And I believe people can have that, and they just don't know it. And if you need a why, I always tell people, you got to have your why. Why would I do this? Because it's a lifestyle change. If you need that why, and you're getting up in age, and you're not ready to settle into dying, this is why then for you. Maybe you don't have the health issues. Maybe you don't have the mental health questions that you're dealing with. But just the fact that we all got to deal with our mortality, and having worked with the elderly, I know that if you don't take care of yourself, it does not get easier as you get older. It gets a lot harder. And this has been, like you say, it's changed everything.
Yeah, that was definitely my why. And that's part of being resilient too, is the resilience has a pyramid. Okay. And the top of the pyramid in resilience is the most important thing. And that's your why. And everything stems from that. So if you have a strong why, and you're right, I didn't want to go down the path. If there was an option, I just didn't know there was an option not to be like my dad or like my mom. My mom died in 2017 from Alzheimer's. and it
Oh,
was a
that's rough.
terrible death. It was really a terrible death and terrible quality of life for the last 10, 15 years. And she's very young. So if I were to follow my mom's steps, that means in 10 years from now, I'll be dead because she was 67 when she died. And, but her diet was the worst thing you could actually ever think of. I think she had basically gone off Whole Foods completely and was just living off like, wheat thins with spread cheese. And I mean, just like the worst food you could ever think of was like 99% of her diet. And then her mind just started going. And we are like, well, just feed her stuff she likes because she's already sick. And, of course, we had no clue.
Well,
So my
just like
brother,
cancer, that Alzheimer's is on the rise. I mean, this wasn't as
yes,
big of an issue as it was, it's a bigger issue now than it was, say, 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And it just keeps
right,
getting bigger and bigger. And the common denominator is that we're all eating this same garbage. And wheat thins, for example, those are marketed as a healthy product. But you and
right,
I both know that they're just
whole
full of
grain.
everything that's going to take you the wrong direction.
That's what yeah, and that's what we thought. Well, she's just eating wheat thins. How bad could it be, right? And then she's got some cheese, so even though it's spread cheese, whatever.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, whatever. But we didn't know. We're like, okay, yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty healthy, right? It's not bad. We give her some fruit every now and then, but I mean, no meat. She wasn't a meat eater. And man,
Yeah.
her health deteriorated. So my brother and sister both got on board with this too, because their health issues, because they had problems too, and we're all concerned about not going down that path because there's probably a genetic predisposition that's a component to Alzheimer's. So we know that if your
Sure.
mother had it, there's you have probably a little better chance of getting it. But then we also, now knowing this, it's like, okay, I got tools now. I got things that can help me not get it, right? So that's pretty huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's a genetic predisposition for cancer as well, but
Of course.
you can make that soil ripe in your body because
Yes.
cancer cells they feast on glucose, and
Right.
then they have tons of insulin receptors in them in the cell. So they're more so than normal cells do. So they're looking for a body that's full of glucose and insulin. And when we're eating all this stuff that's out there, we're just constantly producing insulin to deal with that glucose. And then when you got that genetic predisposition, I think those two things coming together in the cancer community are going to actually make some real headway eventually. But you got too many people who have all their eggs in the genetic side of it that don't want to face the fact that people changing their diet can get healthy. And I hope that's not the case with most of those doctors. There are quite a few doctors out there that are willing to talk about how you can starve cancer. Dr. Thomas Seyfried is one that, well, he's a professor at Boston College.
Right.
And then there's other doctors like there's an Indian gentleman that I can never remember how to say his name, but he talks about how that there's an importance at us looking at diet a lot closer in the medical community, because I think the medical community has moved us only in the direction of medicine, trying to find a magic pill to solve everything. And there is no
Right.
magic pill that solves everything. There are certainly some medicines that can help people once they get to a certain level. But if we're doing the right way of eating, it can eliminate the possibility of those things, or not eliminate, but definitely mitigate the possibility of those things becoming a problem that you might be genetically predisposed to. And I'm sorry for the passing of your mother. And I've dealt with Alzheimer's, and I've seen
Yeah.
some really tough cases. So I understand exactly what you're saying. And I don't want to leave this video telling anybody that this is the cure for Alzheimer's and this is the cure for
Right.
cancer. But it's certainly going to get you on a road that's going to keep you stronger in situations where you might deal with that. I'll give you one small example. I used to get sick so easily. If my kid came home sick, I'm going to be sick next. Then my wife's going to be sick. Then the other kid's going to be sick. And then we're going to trade it around for a couple more weeks.
Right.
My youngest son came home about 5 days ago with a cough, and then he had a light fever the next day. We got him checked out. He doesn't have any of the stuff that's going around, so they don't know what's wrong with him. He's just sick. But then my other son started to show signs, and then later on my wife got it, and I haven't had one sign in the past 5 days, and I'm around them all the time. I was helping my son with his math the other day. Felt like I was taking a bath in his spit because he was coughing so much. But
Yeah.
I'm able to resist that now. And I think that having that health in your body, that having that right food that gets you there is so key to stopping a lot of these things from taking root. The reduction of inflammation, and inflammation is at the root of just about every disease. It seems like my inflammation markers are 1 out of 10 every time I've checked at the doctor. You haven't had that second follow up yet, have you?
Oh yeah, I did, and it was amazing. So I went back for my second follow up. I wasn't 264 anymore. I was 244,
That's
and my blood work was amazing. She's like, "Well, I was going to recommend some things because you're borderline, but everything's normal. It's just some stuff's low." I'm like, "Yeah, well," and she goes, "I can't really recommend it." She goes, "Just keep doing what you're doing." So there's doctors out there individually that will do this, but like what you're speaking to is there's doctors who may be individual or independent, and then there's the medical system and the pharmaceutical system and the FDA and the food system and all these. Eisenhower warned us about against the military-industrial complex. Well, we have the pharmacological and food industrial complex and medical industrial complex. We have huge hospital systems that depend on cancer. They depend on cancer being there so they can treat it with expensive therapies and surgeries and So what's interesting is if you look back, I think of that documentary. I think it was the fat documentary I looked at last that actually talks about that they had knowledge. They were doing starving cancer cells with ketogenic diets in the 1920s, in 1918, 1920. And they did it with rats and it worked. And they wrote all these papers, but all this knowledge that they had of the strengths and then, a general health, even on a ketogenic or an all meat diet was studied. And like, there's tons of papers out there, but all of them were before the Great Depression. And then when the Great Depression came and people were just worried about not starving to death, they're not worried about nutrition.
right.
They were and they were in survival mode. So all that knowledge got lost. And then World War II, just survival mode, right? They were trying to defeat tyranny and become free. And then after that, the 50s happened and everyone forgot about all that stuff. And everyone started, and then all the foods got introduced, the sugars like Cokes and all these things, right? So that's where we kind of slid off, I think, during the Great Depression and World War II, because we had this knowledge. It's still there. It's not like we lost it. It's available.
It's funny you mentioned that because I was thinking just yesterday that the best way I can put it when I was talking to my wife is, you can have vegetables if you want, but I mean, that's survival food, basically. Yeah. That's just what you need. That's when you have nothing else and you've got to get by, then that's an option. And maybe you can mix it with some if your body's not having a difficult time like mine was. But that's the way I see it. It's survival food.
When you talk about beef being expensive, it's expensive on a weight ratio, but not on a nutrient weight ratio. If you're looking at the cost per nutrient, it's much cheaper, right?
That's a great point.
Then trying. So you got to look at like, okay, this lettuce and these Brussels sprouts have a certain amount of nutrients, but a lot of them aren't bioavailable. A lot of them have nutrient blocking. So you get much less out of the food than you would out of a small steak even.
Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately it's just about keeping your hunger down if you're trying to survive too. Mm-hmm. You got to be able to get through your day. Talking to you has just been, this is why you're good at what you're doing. You're an influencing person because you're paying attention, you're motivated, and you're making it happen. I mean, you're changing people in your own community. So I'm glad you're out there here on YouTube along with a few others that are doing this, because I just want to see more and more people find this way of eating and find the freedom that comes from living the life you've always wanted to live. I mean, life is going to be tough no matter how good a shape you're in and how good your mental health is, but it's a lot easier when you're at your best that you can be at. And I think that this is the way to do it. And I'm glad you found it.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Thanks for making your videos. Keep it up. You're still making a difference. I know people are telling you that, but I just wanted to let you know that you started me down the rabbit hole. And actually, that person that initially liked your video that sent it my way, whoever that is, thank you, because they made a difference in my life too.
Hey, man, it's been a pleasure having you on, Larry. CarnivoreSoldier, y'all. Be sure to check out his channel. Go over there and like and subscribe and hit all the buttons. I know you're not used to hearing me say that, but
it'll get the message out.
Yeah, exactly. And share these videos with your friends, folks, because you never know who's going to be seeing this and think, I'm exactly where they were and I can be exactly where they are. Maybe I'll give this a try and you could change somebody's life.
Right.
All right. Well, you have a good one, sir. It was a pleasure having you on.
You too.
Be sure to check out Ferrigno Freedom Facebook group. This group is private so that you don't have to worry about all your personal information being shared with all of your friends. We're just here to encourage each other and keep each other on track.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?